Now I could tell you why the Kawasaki ZE1 and Ninja E1 are really useful city bikes. Or I could rag them around this go-kart track for the next hour.
This is way better than riding to work, some boring city. Whee! It's weird, it's so quiet. You can hear your knee sliders. I mean, it's not fast. It's pretty good fun though. It's weird, the no engine braking thing. Even at this pace is just something you got to get used to. Oh, look at that. Let's get some speed this time. 41, 42, 43. You can hear everything. Still reckons I got 25 miles of range, which is pretty cool. See how quick I can run it out around a racetrack. There is a boost button here somewhere. I'm going to find it on the straight this time. Whee! Oh, that's better. In exactly the same way that the MotoGP riders have to press a suspension lowering button on the way out of slow corners, you just have to press the boost button on this. And then it gives you full boost. I'm not saying it's exactly like a MotoGP bike, but it's exactly like a MotoGP bike. Only quieter and slower. Z time. Z is good at doing stunts. Prove that point. Most important thing for a small city bike, ability to do stoppies and skids. You do have to unplug the front ABS, but I'm pleased to see, even though I've unplugged the front ABS sensor, the speedo actually still works. That's a win. Let's see, they thought about this, Kawasaki. You giveth to the dolphins with one hand and you take away from the dolphins with the other. Electric bike, allegedly good for the environment. Burnout's good for the soul. I'm doing that again.
Told you there'd be a giggle. Proof, if ever it was needed, that motorbikes are awesome. Whether they're 2-stroke, 4-stroke, electric, really fast, really slow, 2 wheels is a ticket to a good time. Every damn time. But to temper my enthusiasm from all that skidding around on track, the bike world producer decided that I should kind of put my money where my mouth is. He has taken away my tins of fuel and all the keys to my normal bikes and tasked me with living on an electric bike for the next week. That's kind of like taking heroin from a heroin addict for a week. I'm going to be full cold turkey for the petrol, but I'm determined to see if I can make this little Kawasaki EV work around my normal day-to-day life. Now, all the time we're told about these electric bikes, about the fact that they're great city commuters, they're great for this, they're great for that. I don't live in a city. I live here in the middle of nowhere. There aren't any charging stations around. There aren't any convenient offices to sit for a day's work and plug my batteries in under the desk. So rather than try and fit my life to suit the electric thing, I'm going to see if I can force this thing to work around my lifestyle. We'll see. First job, because of my questionable life choices, I regularly need to go to the other end of the farm to check whether the water tank is actually filling, or if it's full of frogs or mud or rubbish, or I'm going to run out of water in the next 10 days. So I'd normally use my quad bike for that, but no fuel means no quad bike. So see how the ZE1 can cope with the field. Okay, little Kawasaki, time to do your best impression of a quad bike. Yes! Go, little electric Kawasaki. Look at all that water! Yes, water tank is fine. Time to celebrate with a victory jump. Whee! So what is this overgrown Skeletrix car, half a milk float electric vehicle thing all about? Let's take a look at the details and see how it measured up to a normal motorcyclist. Something I do really like about these E1s is they both feel reassuringly familiar. They've got the same sort of standard Kawasaki cockpit layout. They don't have weird and wacky features. They just look and feel like motorcycles. I like that. But when you start fiddling with them, you notice a few of the differences.
Boost mode!
Where the starter button should be, there's a big E-boost button, which gives you a little punch of speed, which we had great fun with on the track, but it's also useful for getting out of junctions and making overtakes on cars. On the left-hand switch cube, you have a mode button to change between eco and road mode, and a walk setting, so if you're trying to push it around, you can use that for assistance. To be honest, I didn't really need that. They're light enough you can push them around anyway, but I did have great fun seeing how far I could ride it with the walk button set to backwards. I'm not sure that's what Kawasaki had in mind, but that's what I'm going to say it's for. Now where it gets interesting, if you're into these sorts of things, is under the, I want to say fuel tank, but under the bit in front of you. Because first of all, we've got this. This I like to call the scrounging device. This is what you use when you go to see your mum, or your nan, or your friend, or the local cafe, and while they're not looking, you plug this in and you get free petrol. I like that bit. And you've got two of these. You'd have a hard time disguising it as a laptop to charge it at work, but I'm pretty sure you could hide it under your desk and stick the lead in and your boss would be none the wiser. Under the seat, which is weirdly stiff to get off, under the seat, we've got the main charge port. So this is the one that when you come home after a day's pottering around locally, you wang your charger in there, it draws about 8 amps. That's a really easy way just to plug it in, come back the next morning, full tank of fuel. Happy days. Now these things cost 7,200 quid for the E1, and then the Ninja's a little bit more, it's about 500 quid more for the Ninja. They do a sport as well. For that, you get 12 horsepower. Realistically, that means cruising speed of about 55 mile an hour. If you put it onto boost mode, I managed to get mid to high 60s out of it, so there's a little bit of speed to be had. Of course, then your battery does that as your speed does that. So generally, I ended up riding around at 40 mile an hour most places, and that did the job just nicely. Running gear, well, obviously there's no oil to check. There's no engine to tell you the specs of. It's got a little whizzy electric motor in the middle. It's got a normal chain drive at the back, and it's got normal disc brakes front and rear, as you'd expect on any 125 type bike. It does have ABS as well, and what they've really cleverly done is they've put the connector for the ABS right by the lower yoke. So you just pop it undone, and the bike enters a special skids, wheelies, stoppies and drifts mode, which I think is a really good bit of foresight from Kawasaki's engineers. Must be the ones who came up with the supercharger who did that.
Oh, what a glorious day. Right, first errand for the little Kawasaki is running errands. Today we got to go get milk, post a letter, and as I'm out I'm going to go and have a nice cup of coffee at the cafe as well. It does actually have a regen mode as well, so when you shut off to go downhill it does charge the battery back up to a degree, so when you're going up and down hills all day you do get a little bit back. It's not too bad if you're not worrying about the range. If you're just doing local running around, it's not too bad. You can kind of hold 50 odd mile an hour. Going up hills it drops to 40 on the steep stuff, but you can kind of hold 50 mile an hour around everywhere. One of the things that might not be relevant to current bike riders, experienced riders, but this thing is an absolute doddle to ride. The throttle response is super smooth. It's lightweight, it's got pretty easy riding position. For new riders or for nervous riders, or if you've got a bit older and a bit frailer and you struggle with clutches and things like that, this is a blessing. It's so easy to ride that I think that'll appeal to a good number of people. My mate who runs this is an absolute petrol head, so it feels a little weird pulling up on an electric bike surrounded by Cadillacs and Ford trucks and V8s.
I'm allowed to treat myself to a little coffee, so nice cheeky coffee. Packed this t-shirt and hat, Bike World t-shirt and hat. So I'm going to drop that off. That's going to Stephen. Enjoy your kit, Stephen. I'll drop that around to the post office, and then milk and home. Errands all done. Time to head home. Now the blatting around locally has actually worked out a lot better than I expected it to. One thing that was a bit of a challenge was when we decided to do a bit of long range testing on this one, the ZE1. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was riding a beautiful Italian superbike in the sunshine on the mountains around Abergavenny. Finished the day at Baffle House for a nice coffee and a cake, what I thought couldn't get any better. Until, at the end of the day, Bike World producer Al put the superbike in the van and then pulled this out and told me I had to ride home because he didn't want to drive all the way to my house and then all the way back home again. However, it's 40 miles from Baffle House to Chris' house, and the range of this thing at kind of cruisy road speeds seems to be in the mid-20s. It did not go well. Right, I rode into Baffle House on a superbike. I'm going to ride out of there on an electric 125 equivalent. I got a 40-mile journey home. I'm intrigued to see whether this makes it. I've stuck it in eco mode to start with. We'll see what that's like. But a lot of my journey is on some quite big A roads, so I might have to treat myself to a bit more horsepower. Right, road mode is a bit better. Eco mode, that was a 30-mile-an-hour cruising, and it definitely struggled with the hills. Just regular road mode, I've now got 45 mile an hour. I can live with that. That's doable. It's worryingly saying it's got 18 miles till it runs out. I have got a spare battery in my backpack, but they're a hefty old thing. I reckon they weigh over 10 kilos each. I've got one in there. I didn't fancy trying to squeeze the second spare battery in, so I have got one. If I do run out, I can go a little bit further, but we shall see. We've done 15 miles. It reckons I've got 15 more till I run out of battery. With my extra battery in my backpack, that means I should run out probably on the hill up to my house. We'll see how it goes. Situation critical. Both my batteries are flashing at me. Bike is still saying it's got another 7 miles to go, which, 6 miles, which if it's true, there's a chance I might make it home. That's it, that's flat out now. Both battery lights flashing. I'm on eco mode. Must be getting close to crunch time now. Almost stopped on that last uphill. We're wide open at 10 miles an hour. 1 mile range showing. We've covered 25 miles. Right, there we are, look, officially range 0 miles. See how much further it goes until it stops. Well, that does feel like that's stopping now. Come on, little bike. Can't get over this crest. I'm gonna do another little push up this one. Come on, giddy up. Luckily it's nice and light. Oh, that's it, it's officially run out. Had to push up that last hill, so been saving it up. But now, time for the reserve battery. It was giving me a range of 55 to 60 miles when I put the one new battery in, which, considering 2 batteries got me 27 miles, I couldn't understand how it thought one new battery was going to get me 60 miles. But I think what happened is it was basing the range calculation off the fact that I'd been riding at 10 mile an hour for the last 2 miles and paddling up the hills with my feet. So I think it assumed I was going to continue doing that, which I am not. So that's more like it now. It's giving me a range of 24 miles, which is still really optimistic for a single battery, but I'm going to say maybe at 20 mile an hour it would do that. Hopefully not too many more of these big hills. But distance to home is around 15 miles now. Oh, and my range has just dropped to 15 miles. It's all making sense now. So I'm going to tippy-toe as slow as I can and see if I can make this home. But I think one thing I have proven, 26 miles, 2 batteries, it's not a bike for travelling 2 places with. Which is not surprising, because Kawasaki didn't tell me it was a bike for travelling to places with. It's designed for blatting around locally and doing little errands. Whether that's rurally or in a city, kind of doesn't matter, because you don't need a petrol garage, so you just need a 3-pin plug. So I shan't be trying to travel across Wales on it again. but I will use it for bombing to the shops and the cafe. Thank you very much, little Kawasaki Z. If you don't hear from me again, I either made it home or I'm lost in a ditch somewhere in Wales.
Bye.
To understand why Kawasaki is putting energy into making things like this, their hydrogen vehicles, their hybrid vehicles, you have to understand the kind of global environment we're dealing with in terms of manufacturing petrol vehicles. I'm sure you're already aware there is a bit of legislation that requires all manufacturers of vehicles, not just cars, not just lorries, vehicles, by 2035 that all those vehicles must be zero emission. And right now, the easiest way to do that is with an electric vehicle. Now there's a whole can of worms to be open about what does a zero emission mean, because sure, when you're riding these, they don't emit fumes, but the power to charge the batteries comes currently from a mixture of areas, some of which is coal-fired power stations, so it's not zero emission, but that's what the legislation says. So that's what manufacturers are stuck with. Like it or lump it, by 2035, as it stands, every vehicle brand new that you buy will be zero emission. And while we can get grumpy and miss two strokes and moan about all that stuff, it's a good thing for the planet we live on without wanting to be too green and nerdy about it. And that's what it is. So let's embrace it. Let's see where we end up. And let's quite happily, quietly keep a bunch of nice two-stroke motorcycles tucked away in our sheds for when we want to go and smell some good old-fashioned hydrocarbon. Are those two bikes going to replace petrol bikes as we know them? Absolutely not. They're not designed to do that. This is Kawasaki getting in early, getting a start, getting a foot in the door, so that when it's looked at by the people that make these rules, Kawasaki's making an effort at making electric bikes. Should we buy them? I initially thought no, I won't lie. I initially thought that I would just buy a 4-stroke Petrol 125 over one of these any day. I couldn't see what they could possibly do better. Now that doesn't apply to all electric bikes. I've ridden tons of electric bikes on-road, off-road over the years, and actually found that I've really loved a few of them and found that they do some things better than a petrol motorcycle. And living with these two things for the last month or so, I have to admit they do some things better too. The big surprise for me was how well it worked for me. Living here, it's 10 miles that way to my nearest petrol garage. It's about the same that way. So if I'm going out on a long trip, I pass a petrol garage. But if I'm doing all my normal puttering around locally, nipping to the shops, nicking out for milk, popping to see a mate, going to the cafe, going to the post box, checking on the water tank, all the silly faffy running around I do, these have actually been better than any of my petrol vehicles, because I come home and plug them in, and the next morning I've got a full tank of fuel. I actually have to store tins and tins of fuel on the farm so that I've got enough to keep myself driving. I don't have to do that. I just plug it in and it works. I didn't expect that to be a benefit, but it was. On top of that, when I'm leaving the farm super early in the morning at 6 AM, I quite like that I can cruise by completely silent, listening to the birds. It all sounds very romantic when you put it like that. I did enjoy that about these bikes. Using them as a tool, using them as a local thing for doing errands on, I'm into them. I think they're actually really good for that. Using them to get back from Baffle House in Abergavenny to my house was absolutely rubbish. I did have a good time and it made me smile, but the very next day I was in a 1930s Morris with my dad, and that thing carried more people at a faster average pace and coped with hills better. So this is not a cross-country touring machine. It is definitely not that. But if you need something for doing all your local errands on, blatting around, sticking behind your camper van when you go on holiday and just nipping out to the shops or to the beach or to the lake, I can actually see that being a massive benefit, which I did not expect. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy electric bikes and throw away all your petrol bikes. That's not the answer. But right now, these do a few things better than a petrol bike, and they're worthy of a place in bike world. Thank you very much for opening my eyes, little Kawasaki electric bike. I've had a great time. I'm just gonna take this back with me now though, eh?